We have a question here that
Okay.
was brought up.
Yeah.
Who was this rabbi? What is this rabbi?
Manus Friedman. We talked
Manus
about it.
Friedman?
Manis Friedman. So the question is from Rabbi Manis Friedman, also teaches this system, yeah.
That abandoning can be off and on every hour.
It could be, you can reach the stat where every person can at any time or hour be a Beinoni, because a Beinoni does not abhor evil. Unlike the tzaddik, he does not find worldly pleasures revolting and loathsome.
Right. This is a quote from the Tanya.
Yeah.
Right. So it seems to contradict. If you
Yeah,
heard
it contradicts
a
what we
person
talked
can
about
at any time, at any hour, be a Beinoni because they don't find evil loathsome like a tzaddik does. So anybody can do that. Doesn't that contradict what we said, that a Beinoni has never sinned?
And never would sin.
And never will sin. You can't go be a Beinoni, not be a Beinoni, not be a Beinoni. So the statement he's making there is that any of us actually has the potential right now. Right? This is not something that, even though it's difficult for me and it takes a lot of work, that is something that will necessarily take a lifetime of work on myself. I mean, it probably will, but if we're really committed, when we see what the tools are in the Tanya, if we're really committed, we should know that each one of us has the potential to be a Beinoni, not only in 10 years or at the end of a life or at the end of my next life, but right now. I have all the tools within me now. At any time, at any hour, I could be a Beinoni. But if I did, now I'd be a Beinoni, and now I never would have sinned and never will sin. So they don't contradict each other, although they seem to, because the one statement that a Beinoni has never sinned, never will sin, as we said, it's about either a level of commitment or a level of the divine soul just being at full strength, and it's about their soul's balance, right? Whereas a Beinoni can be someone can be Beinoni at any hour. That's about this is actually attainable, and you have all the tools right now. Anyone can do this. This is every single person can achieve this, and even now. I mean, to do what you'd have to do to achieve it now, that takes a lot of commitment, right? So most of us don't apply that. But they're talking about different aspects. One being what it means to be a Beinoni. The second being everyone's potential to be a Beinoni. Does that kind of answer it?
Absolutely. What he just did, he turned it upside down.
His answer is like, absolutely. This one's.
He turned it upside down and inside out and found the answer to your negativity. It was
So you hear that as saying you could be a Beinoni for an hour, then drop back down, and then a week later be a Beinoni for 10 minutes and drop it down.
The statement that he never will sin.
My brain exploded.
Yeah.
So if you're a Beinoni, you'll never sin. So how can you go ahead and sin and then not be a Beinoni?
Then he wasn't a Beinoni. Right? When he says if someone at any hour could be a Beinoni, that means this morning one of us in the class will say, that's it. I'm just all about my divine soul. Thought, speech, and action is all going to be flowing to my divine soul, period, end of story. And we have the potential actually to control, as we'll learn today, control our heart with our mind in terms of thought, speech, and action. And now we'll be a Beinoni. And it could happen right now. Someone in this room could decide to do it, and we all have that potential. But now that means that person now, as a Beinoni, has never sinned and will never sin. So the two are both true. Now, is there an actual Beinoni alive today? We don't even know, because it takes Herculean effort to do it. But Herculean effort that's within our capacity, right? So he definitely does not mean by any of that you can like be a Beinoni for 10 minutes and then yell at somebody angrily and then be a Beinoni for another half an hour and then we'll take a break from being a Beinoni and then go on vacation and be a Beinoni again. That's a Russia. That's a Russia that's having some good behavior. But if you have the capacity to do any sin, then you're not a Beinoni, right? If you have the capacity to actually let thought, speech, or action express, not in the guts of your soul, not in the identity of your soul, to have like the urge or to have it fall in your mind to sin, but rather to actually, if you could let yourself sustain thought about a sin or talk about it or behave it, then you're not a Beinoni, whether you're acting not like a Russia right now or not. It's not about current behavior, it's about potential for any behavior. He's unconvinced, but that's okay.
This is fine. This is fine.
Let it sink in.
We should know. Me and Rick, this is like a long-running difference of opinion.
We've had this discussion.
So you'll find maybe Manus Friedman is going to bring an angle on this that you'll be more comfortable with, and that's great. It's a very sophisticated point,
Yes.
and there's a lot of ways at getting at it. So the way I'm explaining is not the only way. And if you want to, by all means, look up Manus Friedman. He has amazing.
What is he? He's what kind of a rabbi is he?
He's a rabbi of the same tradition, like Label Wolf, and also Steinsaltz. They all come from the same tradition of these teachers. So he has lots of tools online, lectures. He has books out, and if you find something that explains it better for you, share that with us. Absolutely, yeah.
If you have sin, you can't really wipe that out.
Sure you can.
And
Change the
if
past.
an enemy has never sinned,
Yeah.
then
Wipe
how
it
can
out.
you ever be a baby?
Were you here last class?
Yeah, you missed the class. You must have fallen asleep.
About the 3
He told
words.
us how,
Bothers me
he told us how that could be.
Okay, hold on. Let's unpack it a little, because
Quiet.
this is like a key point of this whole book, and this we want to spend time on and sit in. Okay, so the first thing you said was, if you sinned, you can't wipe that out. So what do you mean by that?
Yeah, I mean, you've done it, so you can't say you didn't do it.
Okay, so you can't historically say,
Right.
I didn't yell at this
do
person,
that,
right?
whatever.
I've always now, chronologically, it's always true, I yelled at this person,
Yeah.
right? But is it always on my record as a sin, first of all, halakhically, right? Is it possible to do tshuva for it? And what does that change?
Oh yeah.
So it wipes out something, right? So if I say I rob a bank and I get caught, and now I'm a bank robber, and I get caught and I go to jail and I realize it was wrong and I spend my 3 years in jail or whatever, and then for me this jail worked and I came out and I no longer rob banks and it's off my record, as in I've done my time. Now I'm back in society and it's all even, right? So I still rob the bank, but I'm not like a bank robber at large who's still guilty of a crime. I've been caught, I've been sentenced, I've paid my time, and now I'm back in society, right? So something, even in secular society, has been, as you say, wiped out. Something's been changed. The aspect of guilt, right? In Judaism, if I yell at someone with anger, which is a sin, and then I apologize to them to tshuva, something is wiped out, even though chronologically one can always say, small ass, you yelled at them, right? So let's agree with that, right? Mm-hmm. Now, I don't go into the whole conversation we had, but you can actually do tshuva to a point where, even though chronologically I physically, yes, did that historically, looking at my soul, I'm no more likely to yell at someone again than somebody who has never yelled at somebody in their life, right? If I may have a temper and yelled at a lot of people, and now my divine soul is weaker because I'm more likely to do that. So that means I have sinned from my soul's perspective, right? If you look at my divine soul, it's like, there's variations there, right? I see that you're more likely to yell at someone. There's a potential for doing it in the future even, right? We're talking about wiping out that. From that perspective, if I can get my divine soul repaired through higher level tshuva back up to the place where it's as if I'd never yelled at them. Yes, still chronologically, when it wasn't a Beinoni, I had yelled at them. But as a Beinoni, from the point of view of my divine soul, I'm the same as someone who has never sinned and I will never sin. That's what we mean. In that sense, we can, from our soul's perspective, wipe it out, right? And that's what a Beinoni means. Not that I didn't sin for the last 4 years, because it never, the opportunity never arose that would get me to sin. It means looking at my soul, nothing would get me in thought, speech, or action to do anything other than thought, speech, and action of the divine soul, right? So that, I know, still that physical person still did things in their past, but as a counterpoint, if you're going to say, okay, if I ever sinned in my life historically, that means I can't be a Beinoni, then what's the point of this book? And surely none of us can be a Beinoni. So that, the idea that there's a book for everybody who can be a Beinoni and how to do it, it can't be that if you've ever sinned historically in your life, that means now that's it, you can't be a Beinoni until your next life, right? So we know that's not the model we're working with. Does that answer a little? That's pretty much the last class,
Yeah.
And it's an important point. And it's a confusing point, yeah.
It sounds like an absolution. You gave yourself an absolution, like in Catholicism, you can wipe it away. No?
I have to think about that. I mean, absolution isn't a term we use a lot, and it sounds like it comes.
Right.
I don't know. We call it tshuva. I'm more comfortable using the word tshuva. It's return, and it's not a sense that even though I've done this and I'm guilty and I don't deserve to be pardoned and I haven't really, someone's just going to wave a wand and now I'm back up to heaven.
Absolution.
Yeah, it's more I've done so much internal work that I'm not that person anymore. Right? I'm not that, as a child I might have stole somebody's lollipop. I was a child, right? Okay, if I went and stole somebody's anything now, that'd be a crime, petty or otherwise, and I'd never do it. Okay, I know historically as a child I might have taken someone's lollipop, but that was not me anymore, right? I'm not a child anymore. That was me as a child. Now I'm an adult. So as an adult, I'm really, the things I did as a child, it's almost a different person. So it's not absolution, it's spiritual growth and maturity and work.
Thank you.
So you can apply that to the current political situation.
Hi guys, come on in. Come on in.
Can we?
Yeah, sure. Sure, we'll just keep talking if it's okay. I'll see you guys. When am I meeting you guys?
I think 11.
We're just gonna take 2 minutes.
Okay, looking forward.
Out.
Yeah. So, sorry, the question was,
Politics.
Could apply this to the current political
I don't think we should mix
situation
religion and
in
politics.
I suppose one could. I don't want to get into much wider things. I'd rather deal with myself
There you go.
and anyone that's come to learn. Now we get into, it's another class. Okay, so let's revisit. I think we're on 180, is that right?
180.
15th of Taylor? Is that right?
Really?
Yeah. All right, so just let's review this chapter just one more time. So we're finally learning what a Beinoni is. They are not someone who, like a tzaddik, can transform their animal soul. But what they can do is they can control, appropriately, thought, speech, and action so that they look like a tzaddik on the outside. And the animal soul will never, it'll keep trying. It will never be able to have a sustained thought, sustained control of speech, or sustained action. Right? And then went through the whole thing. They've never been a Russia, never will be a Russia. We discussed that. But the difference is, the essence of the divine soul, which is the 10 sefirot within the divine soul we've learned about, they don't actually have full control, right? That battle that we talked about in the heart is always happening. There's always a push and pull in the identity of the soul. But in the behavior of the soul, only the divine soul gets out. And then we saw that there can be a time, although there's this constant struggle, the Beinoni can have a time when they have a moment like a tzaddik, and that's when in the day. What time in the day? It's a powerful moment.
In the morning.
During what?
During prayer.
During prayer. Thanks, guys. See you soon. See you soon.
The Shema and the Amida.
Yeah, so we said, when we're saying the Shema, and by the way, we have the blessings of the Shema coming. You asked if we could get that, so I got from a beautiful, I'll show you the source. We don't have time to go over them today, but as we go over the chapters, he does, and you've seen this, like he does go into the blessings of the Shema. Isn't it gorgeous, the way he opens them up? So, like I said, I'd like everyone, as part of this class, to at least get used to in the morning saying the Shema and perhaps the Ve'ahavta because of this phenomenon. Because we said, the times we pray, it's not just, okay, this is when we schedule it, so we pray. The times we pray correspond to an elevation of the divine aspects of Chokhmah, Bina, and Dat. So, just like us during the day, we have productive moments where I can really think well and I come up with something really creative. That reflects what happens in the cosmos, and the divine Chabad, Chokhmah, Bina, and Dat, are elevated from this time to this time. And so when we pray during that day, we have access to that elevated energy, and our intellect can try to fuse or mirror or attune with that intellect, and it's just a more powerful time to do it. It's like riding the right wave on a surfboard. It's just more, you got to pick the right wave, and then whoosh, you have a whole journey, right? Pick the wrong wave, and you have to swim back up. So when a Beinoni in particular prays during that time, the power of the elevated Chabad in the cosmos, and them attuning their Chabad with the Chabad of the Ein Sof, creates a powerful flow in the right side of the heart that, for the time being, overpowers and subdues the midot, the chesed, gvur, tiferet, etc. of the animal soul, And for that time, now they're like, oh, finally, it's quiet, right? And they feel like they've won the battle, and they feel like they're basically tzaddik. But the difference is the yetzer hara, the inclination of the animal soul, is not really transformed permanently. It's just dormant, right? It's dormant. And it can be dormant in different ways, as we'll see. It can be taking a nap, or it can be hibernating for 6 months. But whether you're passing a cougar that's taking a cat nap, or you're passing a grizzly bear that's hibernating for 6 months, either has the potential to wake up again, right? It's not transformed, it's dormant. So with the Beinoni, although when they're praying, they can actually, through the power of binding their intellect with the intellect of the Ein Sof, they can have a moment like a tzaddik where now there isn't a nefesh b'amit that's trying to gain control of their thought, speech, and action. Once prayer is over, generally, now they're back to the struggle, right? So it's a temporary tzaddik moment.
Would it be advantageous to do it, to say the Shema when you first get up, even if you're coming for services like an hour or two later?
No. If you're saying services, by all means, it's more powerful to do it with a minyan. So in that case, you might replace it with Modeh Ani, which is the traditional prayer that we say on waking up that lets us start to acknowledge what's going on, that this is really godliness around me, and then let that build up to the Shema in the service, because if it's always more powerful to pray with a minyan than without a minyan. So as long as you're saying the Shema once a day and you're using it, I want this to be our anchor. Okay, maybe we're not Beinonis right now, but even a Russia can use this phenomenon that when we meditatively approach the Shema, perhaps with the blessings before the Shema, which are powerful meditative portals for us to experience this, we can change the dynamics of how the identity of our soul is flowing, and we can have an impression from that helps us throughout the day to keep maturing and elevating. It's a key piece in the whole technique, whether it's the long short path or the short long path, whatever meditation's using. We want to have some anchor. That's what a Beinoni uses to stay a Beinoni, and that's even what a Rasha uses to become a higher level Rasha, which is pretty much our work. And that was a quick review. Okay.
Go over the 3 ways of, beside tshuva, there was 2 other ways that a Beinoni who has sinned can get rid of that.
Yeah, but let's not. That's if it's all right.
Okay.
That's on the past video. It's not so important.
Okay.
Pick your favorite one.
Okay.
Basically,
Okay.
it's identity or it's behavior, right?
Okay.
I mean, so if you.
That's fine.
Okay, and here, by the way, this is a gorgeous siddur, which has in it, for every blessing, it has little bits of wisdom from the same tradition. So this is the whole shacharit, the whole morning service, and you can just look at any part and then look down at the notes below, and you get meditations and ideas that are based on this text, really. So if you look in here, page 90, after the Baruch Hu, that is the first blessing. I won't go into it now deeply, but it's Yotzer Or, and that's one that looks at the angelic realms and the spiritual worlds in an attempt to inspire my physical body to recognize that even its source is very excited to praise God. The face of the ox under the throne that the body comes from, it's all very tripped out mystical stuff. But you wanna in the morning remind your body, I know you want eggs and you want coffee and you want more sleep and you want to watch TV, but look where you come from. Your source, which is so high in the angelic realm, is so excited to praise God. That's all it wants to do. That's what it was created to do. And so the body can be reminded. It's like, okay, fine, I know my source wants that, so we'll pause on the coffee. We'll say the Shema. And then the second, which if you go on, is about divine love, and that starts on page 98, Avat Olam. This is here to inspire us that the Ein Sof loves us so much, and with all the imagery that describes here, and when someone loves us, it naturally reciprocates a love back. So we meditate in the second blessing on how much the Ein Sof loves us, and in fact that the Ein Sof held itself back and retracted and created all these worlds just so that it could give us an experience and we could learn and grow, and it's so excited to watch us learn and grow, and it's paying attention to us. Then immediately you say, wow, you know, that, well, I also feel something like love and maybe awe. Right? So you explore these for yourself if you'd like. And if you want to attach that to the Shema, I think that's a great thing. Maybe sometimes, or maybe all the time. Okay, and we go on. Shezeh inyan hamivoah b'kriyat Shema, Deoraita, bottom of 178.
What, 178?
Oh, sorry.
180.
Yeah.
Rock.
Bottom 180. Rak mipnei shelo lo levado mishpat hamilcha v'hamamshala ba'ir eino yachol leotzi tavato mikoach el hapoal nitlabesh be'evrei haguf.
Yet, because the evil of the animal soul has not the sole authority and dominion over the city, for the good of the divine soul situated in the brain, it has its say as well. It is unable to implement this desire by clothing itself in the limbs of the body.
So here's your Bainani. You got Shira the Bainani, and she prayed in the morning, and she got attuned with divine Chabad, and got so inspired that she just was like a tzaddik for that half hour, or that 10 minutes. And then she closed her book, and she started, and the kids need this, and my husband needs this, and work needs this, and suddenly you're back in the world, and now the Yetzer Hara suddenly wakes up from its nap and it goes, "Ooh, what was going on there? Okay, time to get back to work." But the Yetzer Hara, it can't actually seize hold of conscious, willful thought or speech or action, because she's a Bainani. She remembers what it was like to have that moment with God that's inspiring her through the day, and no matter how much her evil inclination tries, she's always going to think, say, and do the right thing. Right? The struggle is on, but the nefesh b'mit never actually succeeds. B'maseh dibur machshava mamash.
Limbs of the body to engage in deed, speech, or actual thought.
Right, and he uses the word mamash, which means real, tangible, actual thought. Like I'm gonna take some time and I'm gonna think about this. I'm gonna picture it. I'm gonna imagine it. I'm gonna daydream about it. Not did it occur to me. Not, oh, my 3-year-old is being so rude. I just want to. Oh, never mind. Right. So yeah, you're gonna have reactions from your inclination that jump into your brain. But if you immediately say, now that's not machshava mamash. It's not willful, tangible thought. That's what we're talking about. So we don't have control as a Bainani over what drops into our mind, and we're not worrying about that for the time being. We're having control over what we decide to let remain in our mind. And if it occurs to my mind that 3-year-old is, I should just think about what they're going to be like at their wedding canopy, and all the good qualities I want to imbue in them, and picture that moment, and suddenly I'm not so angry anymore. Perhaps we can always redirect our mind to something the exact opposite of what our inclination is pushing us to. Right? We have control over that. So he goes into what machshava mamash means. L'ha'amik machashavto b'tanugei olam hazeh ech lemalot tavat libo.
Actual thought, meaning to concentrate his attention on worldly pleasures with a view to devising means of satisfying the lust of his heart.
All right, so we'll look at this, and this is key. And I think I talked about Shais Taub's definition of thinking of something versus thinking about something. Right? I think some of you are here for that. But let's go. There's a great teacher, Shais Taub, who teaches this. And he tells a story of how he was driving down New York, and he passed a driveway when he was looking for a parking spot. And there's a sign that said, "Don't even think of parking. Don't even think of parking here. Don't even think of parking here." At first he says, first of all, don't tell me what to think. That annoys me. And second of all, I just did. Right? I read your sign, and I thought of parking there. So how can you tell me not to think of parking there, and that makes me think of parking there? What are you even doing? He says, what the sign should have said is, don't think about parking here. Don't think about parking here. So what's the difference between thinking of something and thinking about something? Right? If we say think about a fox flying a helicopter. Now, boom, we all have this ridiculous image in our minds. We thought of it, but if we're going to have a whole visualization and keep that in our mind, now we're thinking about it. So I drive by this driveway. I see the sign. Now I've thought of parking there, obviously. But here's what I haven't done, right? If I stop And I think, well, it really would be nice to park there. I wouldn't have to pay the meter. And oh, it's close to everything that I have to be at, and my car fits right in there. You know, I can just go back and pack things up. It's so relaxing. And I sit there for a minute and have a beautiful daydream about the stress-free parking experience I'm going to have on this. I'm never going to do it because it's somebody's house and their property. I would never do it, of course. But I had a beautiful fantasy about parking in this spot and how nice it would be. Now I've thought about it. What dropped in my mind, I decided to consciously seize it and for sustained time actually think about it. Now, did I do a sin? No. I just thought about parking somewhere. I wasn't going to do it. It's not a sin to think about, really, to think about parking somewhere necessarily. However, that is the thought of the animal soul. It's a self-centered thought, right? It's something that would be really wrong if I did it. And so when I have a sustained thought like that, that is the animal soul thinking, and now that's letting the animal soul have the driving wheel in terms of thought. So that's a big, big distinction. Thinking of something, we can't necessarily control that. I might walk down the street, and as a Bainani, a person might have 10 counterproductive thoughts that pop into their head. But if they're a Bainani, that means they will never think about any of those thoughts. Every one of them, they say, I'm going to go back to reviewing my line of Tanya that I memorized, or no, I'm going to think about something good I'm going to do for my family today, or no, I'm going to be just meditating on that whatever I'm meditating on. Right? Always redirects the mind so that the animal soul does not have conscious, willful control of thought. Everybody get that? Mm-hmm. It's an important distinction, because we shouldn't be frustrated if we do this work for a year or 2 years, and at the end of it we still, how could I have such a coarse, horrible, self-centered thought occur to me, right? We don't worry about that. That's the guts of the soul. That's the midot of the soul. That's the identity of the soul. But, okay, now that I take 10 seconds or a minute or 10 minutes or 3 days and just spin it in my mind, now that's me. Now it's my choice. That's my responsibility. Why don't you go ahead?
Also, seems like thinking of.
Yeah.
You're like skimming the surface of a lake. If you think about, you're plunging in.
Okay. Yeah. That works, yeah.
Well, also you're directing a lot of energy in a negative direction.
Right. That's the crux.
So it's kind of wasting your positive energy.
Yeah. I mean, in some sense, in New Age communities, people would not accept this because they feel like it's not authentic, right? And you talk about skimming in depth. From a New Age perspective, from a lot of the sort of psychotherapy and kind of soul journeying that people discover, you say, well, how would that occur to me? That's really the deeper part of myself, right? That's my subconscious emotions. That's the midot of my soul. If that would occur to me, I have to go in and analyze that and figure that out. I want to plunge deep, right? And so what if I can control my thoughts on the surface? But who am I really, right? I'm just suppressing, and isn't that a problem, right? So I'm not sure I like the skimming and the deep analogy, because in some sense we are working with the superficial level of our soul, with the garments of our soul, right? And we're saying it's okay if the depth of the soul basically is never dislodged. And that thing that occurred to me, it is coming from the depth of the soul, and I recognize that, right? But the counter to that is, we think the garments of our soul are the superficial part, but the garments of our soul actually elevate our soul higher above its source, or drop it down below its natural level. Right? So although here in the level of category, working with a more superficial category, and the level of source, this is getting a little advanced, we'd have to bring back a few ideas we looked at, but in the level of its source, the thought, speech, and action of the divine soul, that's actually chokhmah and ratzon of Ein Sof. That's the will and the wisdom of Atzilus, or the Ein Sof, wherever you want to put it. And so even though it just looks like I'm deciding not to think about something self-centered, I'm deciding to think about something, say, holy, what I'm doing is I'm using the superficial category of my soul to elevate my soul above its source. So it's the whole system. It's very counterintuitive, and I'm slightly wary of the depth conversation, because we're doing superficial work. We're saying no matter what happens in my identity, my behavior is still going to remain thought, speech, and action of the divine soul.
I mean, and it goes back to what the original thing the label says about anger.
Yeah.
There's no reason to have anger.
Yeah.
You don't have to. I mean, and like you said, a lot of the New Age stuff is anger's good. You got to get it out and blah blah blah. But it really isn't.
Yeah. There's some very well said. So let's go through the paragraph. The Beinoni's desire.
The Beinoni's desire for worldly pleasures will cause thoughts of such matters to rise from the heart to his mind. These thoughts are beyond his control, beyond the sphere of dominance of his divine soul. He can, however, control his actual, conscious and willful thoughts, so that immediately as he becomes aware of the forbidden thoughts, he dismisses them from his mind, not permitting himself to dwell on them, nor to think how to implement them, as the Alter Rebbe will state at greater length further in this chapter. Returning now to his statement that the divine soul of the Beinoni keeps the desires of his animal soul in check, preventing their expression in deed, speech, and actual thought. The Alter Rebbe explains why this is possible.
Yeah, drum roll. So now we're getting to like, this is like center ring of the circus. This is like a main act moment of the Tanya. We've been waiting a long time to get to this. He's going to introduce now a concept called Hamoach Shalit al Halev. Hamoach Shalit al Halev. The mind controls the heart. This is our first practical tool, say, of how this is done. And beautifully, this tool is not one that we need to forge or find or learn or meditate, etc., or even refine in some ways. This is actually something that is innate, that we're born with. So the first practical tool in our user's guide for the soul that the Alter Rebbe is giving us is something that we already have, not because we are temple members, not because we learned with anybody, not because we worked on ourselves, but just because we were born. That is, the mind controls the heart. And so let's look at his words. Ki hamoach shalit al halev, kmo shekatuv beraya mehemna parashat Pinchas, betoladato v'teva yitzirato.
Because the brain rules over the heart, as is written in Raya
Mehemna
Parsha Pinchas, by virtue of its innately created nature.
Right, so he says, Hamoach Shalit al Halev. This isn't a chidush. This isn't a new idea of the Alter Rebbe, but his focus on it perhaps is a chidush, and it comes from the Zohar. Right, so he's quoting the Zohar here, the most mystical text perhaps in Jewish history, and it says in the Zohar that the mind controls the heart. The mind controls the heart. So in real life, if my heart wants one thing, to yell at a person, say, and my mind wants another thing, it's wrong to express anger. I'm trying to not be an angry person. I'm trying to express myself in appropriate ways. Now, who's going to win, the mind or the heart? Right?
Mind.
In life, often the heart wins, but there's a reality here where it says the mind can always control the heart. There is no situation where the mind cannot assert itself and say, even though you want to yell right now, you're going to remain quiet and you're going to start to think about the other person's perspective and you're going to let yourself cool down, whatever your tool is. Right? I really want to eat that cake. Oh, I want that third piece of cake. I want it so much. The heart's yelling, and the mind says, I just got results back from the doctor. I got to watch my blood sugar levels. I don't want to eat that cake. And who's going to win? The mind can always rule the heart. Right? We don't always assert the mind, and then the heart gets its way. But if we properly assert the mind can always rule the heart. And why? That's just natural. We were born that way. We were created that way. And let me give you an example. Right? Say I'm driving along in my car, and somebody does a horrible move and cuts me off, and I start honking, and I roll up my window. I'm having a bad day, so I'm going to vent on this person. I'm yelling at them, and there I go, kind of mouthing off, completely out of control. And now the car stops, and out gets a 320-pound guy with tattoos, and he walks over and looks at me and says, "What'd you say to me?" Suddenly, my mind is able to control my heart, and I'm all, "Oh, excuse me, sir. I didn't mean to honk. I apologize." Suddenly, I find I have great control over my emotions. Right? So what just happened? I was in the middle of a huge rage. I couldn't control that. My heart was running. I was just lost everything, no control whatsoever. Suddenly, my mind realized there was another factor going on, and that's it. The mind controlled the heart, right? Or say me and my wife, we don't have too many fights, but say we had a fight, and we're just going at each other, and the worst is coming out in a relationship. We're bringing up old stuff, and now we're really vamping up, and suddenly, ding dong, and there's a delivery person at the door. What happens to the fight?
Stop.
Beep, pause, right? Just, you can go from 10 out of 10, suddenly you can go from 100 miles an hour to 0 on a dime. You just open the door and you're both, oh, thank you, we appreciate it, have a nice day, right? So what happened? Did we suddenly take a course and learn how to moach shlit halev? Did we suddenly, develop the power of our mind to control our heart? No. It's just every human person has the ability, when they want to, for the mind to assert itself and control its heart by its nature. By its nature. And we actually see it in the flow of consciousness, how it's created. Consciousness begins with chokhmah, then bina, then dad, and only then do the emotions emerge out of chokhmah, bina, and dad. So obviously, if you want to control the whole system, you want to control the source of the system, not the byproduct of the system. Right? So yes, sometimes in life, the heart can be so strong that it can send up ideas and kind of lob missiles up into the mind and have its way. But if the mind really wants to, the emotions are flowing out of the intellect. So when the intellect changes, the emotions do change. Right? So this is our tool, primarily for the mind to control the heart in terms of thought, speech, and action. Right? Now, is the mind going to keep the heart from constantly having the same wise guy idea and trying to find another way around and bucking the system and craving this and wanting that? Not necessarily. But in some ways also, we're going to use this tool later, not just to control how the heart can express in thought, speech, and action, but also to start to do some of the work that's sort of pseudo-tzaddik. Like, we can transform some of the aspects of the heart, and we also use hamoach shlit halev to do that. Because you probably experienced it. If you have some habit or pattern, and you just decide that's not going to be in your life, and for 6 weeks you find some strategy to find another pattern, after a while, you just don't have those urges anymore. If you ever quit smoking, right? If you've ever stopped any habit, all the energy that went into that habit, eventually now it's available for more productive stuff that's more how you want to be. Have you become a tzaddik? No. Right? You don't have full control over your nefesh b'amit, but you take in one area, one domain, and using your mind control over your emotions, you've shifted that, and you're getting closer. You're using the understanding of what a tzaddik is to elevate a certain aspect of your life as a rasha, right? That we can do, and that also is a moach shlit halev. It's not necessarily going to be ever complete, but we can still use it to start to take pieces and move them over and transform some of our habits and things. Yeah.
So it explains to me the line in the Shema about don't follow your heart or your eyes.
Yeah. And he has a gorgeous piece about that.
Because it seems contrary, because your heart, you want to have, chesed, you want to love, but so your mind. But understanding that your heart can lead you astray.
Yeah. I don't think he means if your heart.
No, he doesn't mean your heart not chesed, but that's what I'm saying. But you would see the word, and that's what you would think. But this explains it better, not to follow your heart or your eyes.
Yeah, my heart. Look, I see a poster of a car, and now my heart wants that car, right? And my eyes see it, and my heart wants it, and now I can get, possessed with the idea that I should have this really expensive car. That's
energy goes into getting.
Yeah, or I can decide, what, something passed by my eyes. Don't have to look at it. Don't have to think about it. Don't have to have emotions about it. I can control what my eyes and my heart go after, and I can decide what my compass bearing is, rather than just whatever's in front of me. My heart goes, yeah, I want that, right? שכך נוצר האדם בתולדתו, שכל אדם יכול ברצונו שבמוח להתאפק ולמשול ברוח תאוותו שבליבו.
For every man was so created from birth that every person may, with the power of will in his brain, the will created of his mind understanding, retraining itself, controlling the drive of his heart's lust.
Right, so when he repeats himself, and remember the Alter Rebbe was this brilliant genius and spiritual giant who, when he changed one letter in the Tanya, would review the entire book in his mind. He had that kind of a grasp where he could see every detail. And he wouldn't change one letter without first reviewing the entire book in his mind. So when he repeats a point, maybe 3 times like he does here, we want to pay attention because he's really trying to drive this home. This is key, right? It's the mind, the brain was the heart by virtue of its innately created nature in its birth and the nature of its creation. So 2 different ways. That's how we were created from our birth, right? From the moment we're a baby, that's our nature, is that the mind has the capacity to control the heart. It's just hardwired into us. So he wants us to understand this is not something you have to reach out and practice and figure, well, you have to practice it, but it's something you have to create or discover. This is something that is already in you. The first tool we're going to have on our journey to being a Beinoni is that our mind controls the heart just by nature of how we were created. That is the mechanics of the consciousness.
Preventing his heart's desire from finding expression in deed, word, and thought. When the mind understands the evil inherent in such deed, word, or thought.
And this is our focus here. We're not talking about the work of a tzaddik in transforming the midot of the animal soul. We're talking about the work of a Beinoni. Thought, speech, and action are always from the divine soul. So there, the mind is particularly capable, and any one of us can at any hour, right, assert our mind and become a Beinoni and simply never let whatever's going on in our brain, whatever it throws up at our brain, we just say, no, I'm not going to let that express thought, speech, or action. The mind can do that. And
he can, if his mind wills it, divert his attention completely from that which his heart craves and turn his attention to the exactly opposite direction.
Go ahead. Yeah.
The principle of mind over heart holds true even where the restraint of one's desire is dictated by simple logic. Without motives of holiness, the demands of the mind's logic are alone sufficiently powerful to steer one's attention in a direction diametrically opposite to that which his heart craves.
So what's a good example? Right? Say I say the Shema in the morning. That's my Beinoni moment. And now that's there as an impression. And if I ever feel like I'm just, now my emotions just heading in the wrong direction, whatever my heart is telling my brain to focus on or stress about or think about, I can just say, you know what? I'm going to think about the Shema and how this is all one unified experience coming from the Ein Sof. And that moment I had in the morning, I'm going to bring it back and going to recognize, even though this looks to me like what's happening around me is the wrong stuff, what's happening around me, the Shema says, is actually divine providence. I'm in the classroom with the Ein Sof. This is the perfect lesson for me, and everything is perfect, right? Emunah and bitachon are functioning now. Everything that happened to me is perfect. Everything that's happening now is going to a good place. I can come back to that meditation during the day, right? So just by dint of the force of the mind to be able to control the heart, I can do that at any time, no matter what. No matter what self-centered or counterproductive or obsessive thought I might have, however powerful or deep a grip it seems to have when it appears, I actually do, and look at your mind, I think you can recognize, I actually do have the ability at any time to direct my mind itself to the exact opposite. Right? Oh, I can't believe this person is doing this again, and we just had a big fight over this, and don't they realize it? And now my mind starts to rev, and boom, I can say, you know what? I'm just going to focus on the Shema, and that this is all divine providence. I'm going to fill my mind with emunah and bitachon. Right? Even if it's not what my heart wants, it's the opposite of what my heart wants. Right? Or simple. Right? There's a cake in the fridge. I'm not allowed to eat the cake. I think of eating the cake. I think about whatever. Right? You can use the Shema. You can use, my label even shares with me sometimes a technique when it's particularly stubborn thought. He says, find the most disgusting experience you've ever had, Yeah, we like this one, right? Picture that in detail in your mind, the smells and the sensations. Right? I got 2 or 3 in my back pocket. I just keep them there in case my nephew is having like a particularly wily day, right? A wily day. So when I was a kid, I used to take the garbage out. Sometimes I'd forget, and then it'd be there for a week, and it was like hot in Montreal. And it was up on the top, you know, the stairs in Montreal are this coiling stairways, and it's like this metal black balcony out back. And so there'd be like a week's worth of garbage there, and you get flies and maggots in it, right? Pardon me. And we had these thin bags. It wasn't like now, we have these good bags. It was just like, I don't know, toxic waste, skimmed over and peeled off. So I had these thin bags, I tried to take them down, and so of course when there's flies and maggots, it would always break. And all the garbage would run down the whole stairs, this stinking garbage with maggots all over. I'd have to pick it up and put in a new bag, and there'd always be one in my clothing, and it's disgusting. So when I have a thought that seems to occur to me that I just push it away, redirect, it keeps coming back, I'll be like, okay, all I have to do is just, in my mind, open the lock of the back door of the back balcony. And just the sound of mind of click, now Never Speak is like, okay. Because Never Speak doesn't want that, right? It just wants pleasure. That's all it wants. Lower pleasure, higher pleasure, it doesn't care. It's just an animal soul, and whatever pleasure is in front of it, it'll go for that, right? And it doesn't want disgust, right? So every time I have this thought, whatever it is, right, obsessive, whatever, every time I have it, now I'm going to sit for a minute and meditate on my taking out the maggoty garbage. You'd be surprised how quickly the brain decides, okay, and the heart decides, okay, we're not going to go there, right? We don't like the blowback on that one. So that's one technique, and maybe for more extreme cases, but ideally the positive is better, right? So another meditation that Label shared with me was to picture the angel Michael standing next to somebody. If I was having difficulty engaging in an appropriate way, actually picture the angel Michael, which is the angel of Chesed, next to them, and in my mind have a conversation with the angel Michael about what it is this person has to share with me, what I have to share with them, why we've encountered each other, why we're in each other's domains, and use that to redirect to the positive. And ideally, the positive is always the route we're going to go, not to the sort of maggot garbage meditations. That's just a back pocket tool. But always better to work with the positive. It's a more powerful flow, and that's kind of how we work. But that's all to say, no matter what it is, no matter how deep the craving, no matter how long-seated the pattern, I can always redirect my mind, at least, to the exact opposite of it. We want to recognize that. And when I recognize that, it gives me such a freedom. Because it doesn't matter how deeply my heart is connected to it, how deep the craving, it doesn't matter. I'm not even talking about controlling that. Whatever it is, once it enters my mind, now that's my domain. And nothing needs to be in my mind that I don't say is okay to be there. And if I decide to fill my mind with something the exact opposite, I can fill my mind all the way up and let the details emerge and emerge. And that, over time, will even give me control over what happens in my heart, but immediately can give me control over thought, speech, and action. And out here, the behavior of my soul can be a Beinoni, like right now, right? Nothing stands in the way of that freedom.
So a Beinoni always able to control his heart with his mind.
Yeah, the expressions of his heart, yeah.
But his Rasha is not able to do that.
No, Russia will, on occasion or often, let the Nefesh B'mit express in thought, speech, and action, and they won't stop and say, I'm going to think about the opposite. They're going to say, yeah, I do want to think about what an idiot that person is, right? And let me go over what I'm going to say to them. Let me go over why they deserve to be yelled at, right? So that's a Russia, a normal person. Oh, I love this section. I love it. Right? Okay, now we're going to add a piece, which is, if it's true for mundane things, if it's true that, okay, third piece of cake, my heart wants to eat it, my brain says, you know what, not good for my health. But it's not a sin, it's a nice kosher cake, my wife made it for me, I did a blessing, it's not Pesach. I mean, I'm not hurting anybody eating this cake, maybe my health a little bit, but it's not a sin. But still, I shouldn't eat it, and my mind can control my heart, and I can say, no, I'll have a carrot and tea for dessert, right? But he says now, imagine adding to that there's an issue of holiness at play. Right? So we're not just using our mind to control our heart, we have added strength because this is an issue where, well, I've really decided I'm going to come to Minyan. This is what I want to do, and this is a holy thing in my life. Or it's Pesach and I don't eat bread. Right? And this is a commitment of my soul. So now if we have both of them, both the mind controlling the heart, and add to that the power that we're flowing with our tradition, and that we are fusing our intellect with the intellect of the cosmos, and that light enters our consciousness and flows into our heart. Now, even more so, the mind can always control the heart in matters of holiness. Vifrad al tzad kedusha.
If this is true, whatever his motives, it is true particularly in the direction of holiness. When motivated by the knowledge that his lustful thoughts are sinful and thoughts of Torah and mitzvot good and praiseworthy, one seeks to divert his attention from the former to the latter, so that both his goal and his motives are holy. His mind's will is particularly effective in mastering his heart and thoughts.
ככתיב, וראיתי שיש יתרון לחוכמה מן הסכלות, כיתרון האור מן החושך.
Thus it is written, and I saw the wisdom surpass folly as light surpasses darkness.
So this is from King Solomon said this, if I'm not mistaken. And we just have time to introduce this concept, which is a gorgeous concept. And that is, when we're dealing with meditating on a divine idea, like the Shema, or when we're dealing with doing a mitzvah, which for us we're saying is a way of connecting with an infinite being. Otherwise we could never do that. None of our initiatives could bridge the gap between a limited being and an infinite being, not even a being. And so when we're dealing with that, the light of Chokhmah of the Ein Sof can actually enter our consciousness through our Chokhmah. And now, even though it feels like I'm just having another thought, but this thought's about like Jewish stuff, Kabbalistically, that intellect is never separate from the Ein Sof. That will is never separate from the Ein Sof. That's a channel for us to allow divine light into our consciousness. And that light surpasses darkness, or that wisdom surpasses like our normal kind of shtus, our normal silly thinking. In the same way, Solomon says that light surpasses darkness. So what do we learn from this metaphor, right? At first, it's kind of obvious. Obviously, wisdom is better than silliness, and light has advantages over darkness. So it's kind of an obvious statement. So there must be something more we're going to learn from it, just that wisdom happens to surpass folly. Like, of course, I'd rather be wise than silly, right? So now we want to look at what's the quality, what's the way that light surpasses darkness, and how can that give me a deeper understanding of how this chokhmah, when I invite it in, surpasses folly. So there's two qualities of how light surpasses darkness that are important and instructive here. One is that a little bit of light dispels a lot of darkness, right? If there's a vast cave, and I've wandered in and there's absolutely no source of light, and I just see black, and it's just a tremendous amount of darkness, a huge cave with a huge volume of darkness, and now I pull up my cell phone, I turn on the little thing, one tiny light bulb, suddenly, okay, it's not bright, but I can see the whole cave. I've dispelled a tremendous amount of darkness with a tiny little light bulb, or a candle, or a match. So one advantage is light dispels a tremendous amount of darkness. So you don't need, if you have a whole cave of darkness, you don't need to create a whole cave of light to dispel the darkness, you just need a tiny bit. The second is that it does it instantly and effortlessly, right? So second with 2 points, right? So it doesn't take a while. You don't have to wait till the light flows out and eventually gets to every part of it. It happens right away. And also, there's no struggle, because darkness isn't actually an entity. Darkness is just the absence of light. So there's only light. And when light's not there, you have this thing called darkness, but it's not an entity. It's just because light wasn't there. And then when light returns, now you're like, okay, there's no darkness, because darkness wasn't a thing. Darkness was just light wasn't there, and now light's back. So the darkness just goes away instantly and without any fight. There's no struggle. So now look at wisdom and folly. So we're saying the same quality happens. I think there's all this folly in my soul and my consciousness, and I've always done this, and I've always had this reaction. It's so deep and big and so powerful. How am I going to overcome it? and just one little spark of chokhmah, right? Saying the Shema in the morning with a little bit of kavanah, focusing on, okay, my brain's telling me there's all this separate stuff fighting itself in the world, but chokhmah says it's just one light. Just a little bit of that, and immediately a lot of that darkness can be dispelled, and B, it can be dispelled without any struggle and instantly. So compare it. Imagine the light in the cave versus, say I'm in Arizona on vacation. It's in the middle of the summer. Who would go to Arizona in the summer on vacation? Only a crazy person. And it's just incredibly hot. I'm in this room, and it's just unbearably hot. And I say, okay, finally I'm going to turn the air conditioner on. So now I turn on the air conditioner, and now it starts working, and cold air starts getting pumped in the room. Does the hot air get dispelled immediately? Takes a while, right? Does it take just a little bit of the cold air to dispel the hot air? No. And it doesn't happen instantly. It doesn't happen evenly. It's like it's a struggle. The air conditioner is working and it's pumping in cool air, and okay, it's cool over here, but not over here. And eventually, but the sun's still coming in and heating up this part of the room. And eventually, it gets through a little cooler. But it really is a struggle, right? You need the same amount of cold air or more to heat up the hot air. And the heat is still coming in. It's its own entity. There's still force on that side. And eventually the air conditioner gets the room so that it's comfortable, right? So that's the normal state of affairs. If we project that that's our consciousness, if we fool ourselves perhaps to thinking that all this folly, it's like I just have this little valve and I'm letting in some chokhmah and it's eventually going to like find its way in and work and fight and it's a struggle, that'll be our reality. We can project it and we'll experience that. But if we recognize how Kabbalah says this works, it's really just a candle in a cave. It's not an air conditioner in Arizona, right? And I go into this cave, no matter how dark and big it seems, just light one candle, and all this darkness is suddenly just effortlessly gone, immediately gone, right? A tiny bit of chokhmah can dispel a tremendous amount of darkness. All right, so that's a concept we'll continue next week or next class. Any questions? I'm hanging out. Thank you. Such a pleasure.
It's always a pleasure.
I won't be here.
You won't be here, right?